So with this brief video, we would like to start with our first panel session, which is going to focus on developing innovation ecosystem for impact. I would like to now invite our moderator for the session, Anjani Bansal, Private Sector Partnerships Lead at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to open the discussion and introduce our speakers. Throughout the session, if you feel like posting any questions to our speakers, please do put your questions in the questions box. We'll be happy to take up after the session. Anjani, over to you.
Thank you, Rakhi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Yes, it was great to kick off this event with Preeti's opening remark. I will take a couple of minutes to introduce the topic and the panelists, and then we will dive into the discussion. I'm really excited about the discussion today. Like Preeti, Rakhi mentioned, I lead private sector partnerships at the Gates Foundation, and I've engaged with the startup ecosystem as an investor, advisor, and a keen observer over the last a few years. And I believe that it's the creativity, perseverance, and the risk-taking mindset of entrepreneurs that will be key to unlocking growth and solving some of the most pressing challenges that we face. However, to harness that potential, particularly in developing economies, we need stronger support mechanisms that form an enabling ecosystem. And when we look at some of the more advanced ecosystems, be it Silicon Valley or some of the more emerging ones like Israel or Singapore, we see what are some of these components that go into building an ecosystem, whether it is research capabilities and universities, government policies, incubators and accelerators, and even investors across different stages of building a startup. And here, I think in developing countries, we have an opportunity to learn from those experiences, but not just that, but also learn from experiences of each other and see how we can accelerate the development of similar ecosystems across different geographies and for countries to develop such cross-border partnerships. In today's discussion, we want to bring that focus to the Global South. In both Africa and Asia, we are seeing significant recognition of the potential of building such innovation ecosystems. And we want to explore opportunities for countries to develop such cross-border partnerships that exist across areas such as agriculture, healthcare, financial services, amongst many others. So to explore this topic, we have an outstanding panel today. And I would like to introduce the four speakers that we have on the panel. To begin with, we have Nekesa, who is the Director of Strategy at AfriLabs. AfriLabs has a network of 268 innovation centers in 49 African countries. And Nekesa is responsible for strategy at AfriLabs to help build a thriving innovation economy in Africa. She also works as strategy advisor at SNDBX, which is a collective of SME experts working towards sustainable growth of SMEs in Africa. Nekesa, welcome to this event. Next, we have Tuan Nguyen, who is the Deputy Director for Community and Partnerships at SGInnovate. SGInnovate is a Singapore government-owned organization that invests in and helps build deep tech startups, talent, and community. And besides leading community and partnerships, Tuan has also conceptualized and launched the Deep Tech for Good Partnerships program between SGInnovate and several global partners. Tuan, welcome to the event today. Next, we have Richard Zulu, who is the Chairperson of Startup Uganda. Startup Uganda is an association of innovation and entrepreneurship support organizations to improve collective capacities, influence, and impact. And it currently has 30 member organizations. Richard has also been instrumental in building a developer and startup ecosystem through Outbox, which is an innovation and entrepreneurship support organization. Richard, very welcome to the event today. And our last panelist is Kunal, who is the co-founder and COO of CropIn. I've had the pleasure of engaging with Kunal over the last few years from very early days of CropIn. and have personally seen how under Kunal's leadership, CropIn has established itself as a major agtech startup that reaches out to over 6 million farmers in 56 countries. Kunal believes that farming should be a data-driven and collaborative enterprise and is on a mission to digitize 20 million farmers by 2025. Kunal, welcome to the discussion today. So with that, I will ask Nekesa to first bring her perspective from AfriLabs. It's a very unique perspective given her visibility and engagement with 49 African countries, each with a different level of maturity, different priorities and incentives, and different strengths and weaknesses. So Nekesa, it will be great to hear from you. What are some of these strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities that you have observed in your role across African countries? And in addition to that, where do you see an opportunity of exchange amongst different countries to benefit from each other's experiences? Over to you, Nekesa.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. First thing I want to say is that AfriLabs just announced yesterday introduction of 24 new hubs to our membership. So I know that you've mentioned 268, which we currently are at 292 hubs spread across 49 African countries. So it's an exciting time for us. With regards to the strengths of the ecosystem and what I'm experiencing, having this bird's eye view of the African innovation ecosystem, I'm excited about three things. And one is what we like to call the democratization of innovation. Two is this consolidation of efforts of different players to impact the innovation ecosystem. And then three is the opportunity of intra-Africa trade. So on democratization, what we see across Africa and what I feel is really a key strength of the ecosystem right now is a lot of independent hubs cropping up across the ecosystem. I think the latest study has them at over 700 hubs across Africa's ecosystem. With AfriLabs, we have 292 of those as our members. And why this is important is because you see we are quickly moving away from innovation spaces focused on, or rather found within corporate spaces or found within governments, but we're now finding independent individuals, independent entities beginning to build up these hubs that are focusing on creating opportunity and solutions for their local communities. What's even more important is that we're seeing these hubs cropping up outside of your usual suspects. And when I say usual suspects, I'm referring to the major cities. So a lot of times, for example, I'm based in Kenya, and a lot of times, for example, when people talk about Kenya's innovation ecosystem, when they begin to share the data, begin to share examples, you find that more often than not, they're talking about innovation happening within Nairobi, when the reality is that innovation is happening across the country. And in Kenya, we're beginning to see a lot of these spaces cropping up. We actually have a network of hubs. It's called Countrywide Innovation Hubs Association, based outside of Nairobi. And so the goal there is to begin to highlight the stories, begin to share the impact of innovators and hubs coming that are based outside of the major cities, based outside of Nairobi. And then what happens with that is you begin to see localization of solutions. And so a solution for a community in Nairobi may not necessarily be a solution for a community in Kisumu, which is about 8 hours drive outside of Nairobi. And so we're now beginning to see a lot of localization of these solutions, which means that the impact of solutions that innovators are building is bound to increase. And then the final thing that happens with that is that you hear more voices. You're not just hearing Nairobi voices, you're hearing Kisumu voices, you're hearing Rift Valley voices. And these are cities and towns based outside of Nairobi. So this is what I mean by democratization of innovation. And this is happening across the African landscape, and it's extremely exciting for us. Second thing is consolidation of efforts. And I'm sure Richard is going to talk a lot about Startup Uganda and what they're doing there. And I absolutely love the work that we're seeing coming out of national innovation ecosystems and national associations. So Richard is from Startup Uganda. We have ASEC, which is the Association of Startup and SME Enablers in Kenya. We have the Innovation Support Network in Nigeria. We have the Ghana Hub Network in Ghana, and there's several others. And so what's happening is you're seeing this consolidation of hubs and other entrepreneurship support organizations saying, you know what, we need to consolidate our efforts. We need to begin talking together to each other. We need to create this one voice that is recognizable as a voice of startups, as a voice of hubs, as a voice of ESOs that cannot be ignored anymore. And so this voice is being used to affect or to influence policy. It's being used to talk about what kind of innovation spaces do we need within our different countries. And so that consolidation of efforts is extremely important. We're creating allies. We're moving from focusing on competition, which can be healthy and should exist, but we're focusing on what would be the impact of if we became allies and began to influence policy and the startup ecosystem within that regard. So that's extremely exciting for us as well. And then the third thing that's exciting is the opportunity that intra-Africa trade presents. And we're now increasingly seeing this with the great conversations that are happening around the continental free trade area. And what this means is, and within the African context, we are great at creating high-level policies, which we must absolutely create. And I'm pretty sure it's the same in Asia, high-level policies at the African Union level, at the national level. And the position that hubs, or rather the role that hubs play in this regard, and where it becomes extremely exciting for us as AfriLabs, is we are creating the pathways through which these policies actually begin to make sense to startups and SMEs. And we're creating the pathways through which startups and SMEs are better able to take advantage of the spaces that these policies intend to create. And at AfriLabs, how we're doing that, one way we're doing that is through what we call our AfriPass. And what this is an opportunity for startups that are based within any one of our member hubs to get a soft landing should they wish to scale, should they wish to explore opportunities in another African country. And so this is the way that AfriLabs is partnering, or let's say complementing the work of these high-level policies that we begin to that we see African Union and national governments beginning to deploy. And so these are our key strengths, in my opinion, and what we're extremely excited about at AfriLabs. With regards to what could work better, I'd say one of the challenges that we're facing is some of our legacy systems. And what I mean by this is the ecosystem across, the innovation ecosystem across Africa is fairly young. And we are right now being subjected to a lot of procurement policies, a lot of succession policies that may have worked 20, 30 years ago that don't necessarily work now. And so within the hub space, within the ESO space, there's a huge push to begin to create these policies or reimagine these policies in a way that actually makes sense for startups, for SMEs. And I'll say, to be honest, that one of the major challenges is the friction when it comes to approaching government. But it is a task that AfriLabs and the national networks and some of the startups as well, we've really risen to the challenge. And these conversations are beginning to happen, and we're beginning to figure it out collaboratively with government and corporate entities and so on. Second challenge, I would say, is what we define as our success matrix. Right. And so right now, if you talk about success matrix, what do we define as a successful hub or a successful startup? Many times you might be talking about what kind of funding have they attracted. Now, the challenge for us is to begin to identify what are our other success markers, what are the other indicators that we should begin to look at. And so there's a huge impact question. There's a huge success definition question that we need to begin to tackle. And I think it's by beginning to understand what success really means within our context and how to measure it that we begin to unlock really relevant partnerships and also unlock funding. Third is data. We have a huge data challenge. For startups, for SMEs to be impactful within the African context, we need to make data-driven decisions. The products or the services that we build, for them to be impactful, for them to scale, we need to build them based off of data that we are collecting from within our environment. Now, this becomes a challenge when you consider that a huge component of the continent is still off the grid. We still have questions or challenges around our address systems, for example. Huge populations do not have personal identification numbers, which are, that's something that you need, for example, around mobile money. solutions and so on. So we've kind of, our focus has kind of been redirected as hubs, as startups, as SMEs to begin to tackle this. We, as an innovator, if you want to tackle for agri-tech, if you want to tackle for health tech, you find that you, first of all, need to hack for how do I get this data? Because the infrastructure that should exist that allows you to have immediate access to this data does not exist yet, right? And so there's quite a bit of work to do before we actually get to building the solutions that you want to build. And then for me, the final challenge that I'd want to highlight is with regards to not having enough patient data, patient capital. And this becomes an issue when you think about if you really want to build out successful, scalable, high impact solutions, then you want that kind of capital that says, look, I understand that I may not see returns for the money that I'm putting in for another 10, 15, 20, 40 years. Yeah, and you begin to see this increasingly, or this becomes a lot more visible when we get into the deep tech space and you're looking at health diagnostic solutions, or you're looking at precision farming solutions. These are spaces that really need for people that are funding, and many times we want to look at how government entities can plug into this, because a lot of these solutions are really built to support governments with, for service delivery. So this is a space where I feel we need to have more conversations about where are we getting patient capital from, and what can the entire ecosystem, be it ASOs, hubs, startups, governments, tech corporates, academics, what can we all do to make sure that that this happens happens soon. So while these are weaknesses, I think they present great opportunity, and they present great opportunity for us to work together. It kind of sets out the foundation for where we should all be focusing as a cohesive ecosystem. So much as I've spoken about them as weaknesses, I think they do also present lots of opportunity for collaborating. I think I'll end there.
Thanks, Nekesa. Very insightful. And I already see some of the themes you have mentioned, for example, around data, which are applicable across multiple countries, not just in Africa, but also in Asia. I'm sure Kunal will talk more about his experience of trying to solve this common problem across multiple geographies. Next, I would like to bring Tuan into the discussion. Tuan, you heard Nekesa talk about some of the challenges like clear definition of metrics, access to patient capital, consistency in use and accessibility to data, and also some of the opportunities around consistency in policies, etc. I would like to you to talk more about apply a lens of deep tech. That's an area which has evolved significantly in Singapore, and you are yourself involved deeply in shaping the space. So how do you see in deep tech some of these issues manifesting themselves? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anjani, and also thanks to the UNCDF for having me here. It is actually really fun to learn about the positive change that innovation can create from the lens of what Nekesa was sharing. As innovation becomes more democratized, I could also understand the key challenges that she was talking about, and in my sharing, I would touch on a couple of them from our experience in Singapore. So once again, my name is Tuan. I'm from SGInnovate. We are a Singapore government organization that is tasked to help Singapore commercialize research and development to become marketable commercial solutions. In my sharing, I will focus on a couple of key things. First, why the focus on deep technologies such as artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, space technologies, for example. What we have learned from our experience building up this deep tech innovation ecosystem, considering that the theme of this panel discussion is about impact that the innovation ecosystem could create. I will also go into some of the outcomes that we have managed to achieve by investing in this innovation ecosystem that focuses on deep tech. So that is the key point. So first, why Singapore chooses to focus on deep technology. It is because we see that deep tech holds the promise to create the largest kind of impact, not just to Singapore, but to the world at large. We can see as our world is looking to build back better from this COVID-19 pandemic, the drive to build a more resilient, more sustainable economy rests a lot on whether the world can actually leverage science and technology innovation in order to, for example, feed our population in a more sustainable way, create a more sustainable supply chain and manufacturing processes, invest in low carbon technologies such as hydrogen. All of these are the foundation for the global commitment to net zero targets in the next couple of years and decades. And that is why Singapore and SGInnovate in particular want to focus on deep technologies in our course of work. So fast forward, so SGInnovate is a relatively young organization. So we have been founded for about 5 years. And in the journey of 5 years, we managed to actually build a very large and vibrant and engaging deep tech ecosystem comprising about 70,000 startups and investors, researchers and corporate innovators, as well as government and international organizations from all over the world. The lessons that we have learned in building up this ecosystem are 4 key things. The first one is that it takes a very strong government commitment and vision. In the words of Nekesa, I think consistent policy needs to be there. So in the context of Singapore, we have constantly we have been investing tens of billions of dollars in our research and development efforts for the past 2 decades, actually. And these efforts in the long term have been bearing fruits. SGInnovate can actually tap the many patents and intellectual property that has been developed over the past years as we build deep tech startups for Singapore. The second lesson is that it is a very long journey. We cannot look to build an ecosystem with just a horizon of 6 months to a year. In fact, SGInnovate does this on a weekly basis. So every week we would have a knowledge sharing event. We would have a roundtable discussion to bring together different parts of the ecosystem together for knowledge sharing, for collaboration opportunities. And because of that, there have been a lot of outcomes, which I will touch on in a little bit. The third lessons that I want to share is about the importance of partnerships. We can never do this on our own at SGInnovate. We are a small team of about 60 people in total, but the outsized impact that we have managed to create is because of our partnerships with about 100 different global organizations, including some United Nations agencies, the Asian Development Bank's ventures, the X Prize Foundation, the World Economic Forum, just to name a few. We do work increasingly with South Asia regions such as India, Southeast Asia. We have also had some touch points with Africa. So for example, we hosted Dr. David Sanger from Sierra Leone, who is driving the country's innovation effort a lot, but we would love to actually increase our engagement with Africa where possible. And the last lesson is about impact measurement, how it is that we can actually have success metrics to actually show that these are the outcomes of our work in the innovation ecosystem. And that brings me to the last part of my sharing about the outcomes of our work in building this innovation ecosystem on deep tech. The first outcome is that we have such a large and fast growing ecosystem that if and when we need to solve a particular challenge, for example, procurement, we know who to reach out to. For example, right now, we are talking to our partners about how to have a green lane procurement policy so that hospitals could better adopt startup solutions. That is something, Nekesa, that when you mentioned, I thought that was very relevant, regardless of the stage of development and innovation. We also have partners that we can reach out to easily if we want to meet real needs, such as the responsible use of data, which is the new fuel for the innovation economy. We talk about how to use data in an ethical and transparent manner that is not biased to anybody. The second outcomes is that we now have a very strong pipeline of innovators in deep tech that are looking to bring their research from lab to market. This is something that we did not have 5 years ago, for example. We also have more investors who are willing to actually provide patient capital, which is very critical to the success of deep tech innovations. These deep tech investors understand that they are not going to make returns from startup investments within 2 years. They are looking at 5 years. Some investors are looking at a 10-year horizon, for example, and that is a result of having a very engaging ecosystem to change mindsets from our experience. We also help to catalyze a lot of commercial opportunities between corporations and startups. And these are the economic outcomes that I think have become real because of our investment in a strong ecosystem at the foundation. And with that, I think I want to end the brief sharing here and look forward to more conversation to follow.
Thanks, Tuan. A lot of amazing points, and I think a lot of material for us to have discuss on follow-up conversations and learn from your work. We are, unfortunately running a bit behind on time, so it seems like we'll have to, cut out the Q&A part of this session. So I will now move on to Richard. Richard, your experience of building this ecosystem in Uganda. What do you hear from Nekesa and Tuan that resonates, and also what do you see are some of the opportunities and challenges with your perspective coming from Uganda? Thanks. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon to you all, depending on where you're joining from. I'll give a perspective as a local ecosystem player, largely in terms of what our journey has been, bringing together different actors in the Ugandan startup ecosystem, and what opportunities has that provided, and what opportunities can be leveraged by different startups. So Startup Uganda is really not our first attempt at establishing an umbrella organization within the Ugandan ecosystem. As early as 2012, we came together to try and establish an organization called the Business Incubation Consortium. At the time, it was supported by Grameen Lab. It was very, very early stages. For those of you, Nekesa, who can remember what the African ecosystem looked like in 2012, the multinational corporates were just starting to set up shop in Kenya, in Nigeria, and South Africa. So it was really, really early stage. And that totally failed. It totally failed because in hindsight, there are a number of things that I can look at. One of which could be we failed to demonstrate value from the get-go in terms of the benefits of really, really working together as ecosystem enablers. It was really, really early stage. As such, because of the environment was very relaxed. That was a point where you could launch a mobile money platform and no one would ask questions, right? You could experiment with your startup directly on consumers without any regulation and no one would ask questions. So there was really a lack of agency within different players in terms of why do we need to come together at this point? So we really had to see what would be appropriate if it means bringing together different ecosystem actors together. So as earlier introduced, Startup Uganda really is focused on the enabling environment for businesses. And this includes the business development service providers, the incubators, the accelerators, and academia, kind of trying to see how we can use our collective capability to really create an environment that can benefit the startups that we support. So 3 years ago, we started this as an initiative, and really at this point, it was now very demand-driven in a way that we came to the realization that the rate at which the ecosystem was growing and the fragmentation that was existing within different efforts by different actors was actually leading to a duplication of effort, but also the scarce resources that were put towards supporting entrepreneurs were actually not being put to good use. Secondly, another trigger that really created that agency was the policies. And you could agree with me that the policy environment globally is on a roll, right? In different countries, technology businesses are being, I don't want to say attacked, but either regulated heavily, or there's a focus from the regulatory players in terms of how to ensure that they conform to different rules. To the extent that right now you find that a global startup has to take a deep interest in each and every country in which it operates compared to having a blanket solution for everything. So we started seeing government also getting interested in the space and releasing money largely for digital innovations, right? Every year they could support up to 60 digital innovations with funding. But that also came with the digital tax that we started seeing. And now we have an excise duty on data connectivity. But also most importantly, because the space was growing, we saw that actors within the ecosystem needed to have visibility in terms of what their efforts are to kind of push for that co-creation and collaboration with different stakeholders. So for us, really, this aspect of seeing the demand that started coming out, many of the actors who wanted to work in the field, like development partners and government, did not want to work with a single entity. They wanted to work together with us as an ecosystem to represent the businesses that we do support. Secondly, they wanted to see that we create employment at scale. So when they come in to support, they want to see that the businesses we support and also our interventions are actually operating at scale. So we really did a number of initiatives to kind of bring together these different actors and start the co-creation and collaboration. So we launched a digital innovation challenge where we brought together development partners, our local government and startups and our members to kind of innovate and support startups to scale. We also launched a platform, a mentorship platform, where startups could actually access support and also get to profile their businesses and get linked to investors. And the Startup Uganda platform is really meant to be a one-stop shop where you can stop asking what's happening within the ecosystem, but actually find something to reference. And of course, we have our Kampala Innovation Week, where we've hosted a lot of actors from Malaysia, but it has become one of our channels where we get to have discussions also with the global ecosystem actors, with the Ugandan actors, to find opportunities for us to collaborate. Now, currently, we are launching an initiative with Japan, with JICA, which is focused on supporting digital startups to actually raise between $1 to $1.5 million. It's the first of its kind, and we've identified 3 members within the consortium, and JICA has helped us identify investors and actors in the Japanese market that we can collaboratively work with to see that we support our digital startups. So there are lots of things happening, honestly, as a result of coming together. But in terms of the opportunities that have come out of the discussions we've had, Anjani, is really the aspect of knowledge exchange, not only between the actors, but also between the startups across different geographies. For instance, I see there's an opportunity that exists that agri-tech startups in Asia are able to co-create and exchange knowledge in terms of where the opportunities in agriculture. and largely they're in the midstream of the food system around the production, trade and market, and kind of the wholesale area, right? And we're also seeing that agri-SMEs in Africa kind of have a challenge when it comes to breaking into global markets, largely in the agriculture food chain, because the global markets or the global players vertically integrate very, very strongly, all the way from production to the farm. And so how can we create opportunities for agriculture startups in our area, largely in Uganda, to kind of utilize that opportunity? They are restricted to the local or regional markets. And that's been working for some time. But I think the opportunities for them to actually expand as access to markets. Then the other is, again, going back to procurement, there's a big push for local content. We call it local content because, for instance, in the Ugandan market, there's a requirement that up to a certain percentage of any procurement has to have a local actor, right? And I know CropIn has kind of tried to utilize some approaches that way. But I think in terms of partnership building, our Asian counterparts can kind of partner with our local businesses here to see how best they can utilize opportunities within the agriculture sector where there's a big push for local content. So in the interest of time, Anjani, I think I will leave it there because I see there's we have very limited time. But I think for me, in terms of communicating, really, there are so many opportunities to co-create and collaborate between the Asian and African markets. It's really how we figure out the needs on either side of the aisle and see how to match those needs and meet the demand here. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Great to hear your amazing work that you are doing in Uganda, and lot for us to learn from as we take off this initiative. Kunal, coming to you now, as someone who has built a startup, a technology startup in India, expanded to geographies in Africa and other regions of the world, what are some of the initiatives that you have benefited from? And also, what are some of the challenges that you continue to face due to problems that remain as yet unsolved? It would be great to hear from your real-time experience of the South-South innovation platform that we are discussing today. Over to you.
Great. Thanks, Anjani, and hi, everyone. So first of all, a quick introduction. CropIn is basically an ag-tech company. Recently, we have also ventured into the fintech side, and we are building a complete full-stack solution for the agriculture ecosystem. And for the very relevant need that the ecosystem now needs a complete solution. From earlier when it was point-based solution around digitization, advisories, climate smart agriculture. Now it's a full stack solution need that is emerging. When we work with large programs, when we go to governments or we go to development sectors, they said, no, help my farmers increase their income by 50%, 100%, which means starting from the cost of production, getting them access to finance, to ensuring their crops, to helping them with the digitization and climate smart agriculture practices, to also helping them supply chain traceability and market linkage solutions. So that's how the programs, and then there is an element of sustainability also that's brought in that particular perspective. And I think that's where the opportunity of larger collaboration exists, where these type of hubs can really play a very important role, because in providing that entire solution, there could be multiple partners that can come together to solve the entire piece. And I think that's where the industry is moving forward right now. And our journey actually started off by when we were small, we were young in 2010. It was more about finding the problem statements of that particular time. And that point in time, the problem statement was having digital agriculture at the first step, right? There was no data that was available. Institutions were working very inefficiently. They were not knowing what crops are being produced. Is there a pest and disease attack? What is the output that's going to come? So helping them digitize to understand the risk of production that is there was the first step. And that particular point in time when we were new, we also wanted to go to other markets. We had established our brand in India by around 2015. And one of the I think that's where these type of initiatives plays a very important role. The first time when we went to a certain initiative was one of the initiatives in India through Millennium Alliance. It was a UK DFID funded initiative with many other partners. And we won that particular initiative, and that gave us the capital and a market for us to explore. And that was the first time when we went to Africa. We went to Kenya. Our program was around complete end-to-end solution for farmer digitization and market linkage service. And we also had a local partner over there. But once we built that solution, understood the local needs at that particular point in time, we actually then started expanding that particular market. So I think first and foremost, when we talk about these initiatives, the first fundamental thing that as startups we really would like to see is investment coming as a part of these hubs. Investments are very important for startups to build their products, intervene in new markets. The second thing is all about understanding the market. The product market fit is very important. If I have an innovation in one part of the world, and if I want to go to the other part of the world, I would like to know whether all of the product that I have built is having the right value proposition for the customer that I'm serving. And that's where a layer of mentorship is very important. And startup hubs can really bring in that mentorship and the local knowledge to context for these innovators to come and participate in that market. Because at the end, what happens is if there is value and there is value at to the last mile, if the farmer is actually seeing the value, then the ecosystem will start seeing the value. And if there is no value for the solution, it will be there for 1 year, 2 years, but then gradually it will phase out. I think that is where the role of mentorship really comes, and people who have invested decades in this sector can really come and play an important role. And in our journey as well, we had mentors both in India and Africa who would actually help us to penetrate in that particular market. And the third part, as I talked about, was more about building programs and collaborations. When we implement programs in Africa, we would like to partner with the institutions there which are having the local expertise, right? They understand, they engage with the farmers. There are local agronomic institutions, there are research institutions, there are agronomists. So we engage with all our team basically comprises of the local resources there, and then they enable the entire ecosystem to work together and create the value. We support it from a technology angle, having a central hub of innovation which learns from all the data that is getting gathered and innovating at a faster pace to solve that particular problem. So I think that is our approach for really looking at agriculture as a holistic perspective. One important thing, which was also highlighted by Naske, was about data. So I think data, is a fundamental thing that would be certainly required, because the current times innovation, the pace at which the innovation is required is very high, and it should be first time right. Now we cannot go and experiment a solution with a farmer because it's a risk, right? So to build that first time right, we need a lot of data, and unfortunately a lot of data is not available. And I would like to request institutions which are funding these initiatives should really think about having a layer of data, or even governments, right? If they can collect data or democratize data, obviously looking into the data protection standards and all. But this data can be really helpful for innovators to innovate, and the faster they innovate, the faster they can go to the market and they can serve the millions of farmers in that particular area. So I would request that the data should be also kept as one of the important pillars for innovators to fastly innovate and fastly create impact in the particular ecosystem. That also helps create an asset which could be used not now but also in the future. Because the challenges of the futures could be different. If I remember 3 years back, most of our programs were not asking for climate smart agriculture, but now almost 70 to 80% of our programs are asking for climate smart agriculture. Now we are also talking about sustainability as a very, very strong pillar. We are talking about carbon plus farming initiative. We are talking about greenhouse gas reductions. So I think these all things will change, and 3 years or 5 years down the line, it will be a different problem statement. But what will support that future is the data that we have collected today. So I think we would strongly recommend that to be considered as a very important framework. And these innovation hubs should also bring that as a clear component in the innovations that they are talking about. So, and very happy to work and partner with any of these hubs across Africa and other parts of the world.
Thanks, Kunal. Always inspiring to hear about your journey, and thanks for sharing, some real life problems that you face and surfacing them to solve for through this initiative. So with that, I think we're out of time, and we will end this discussion. I would like to thank all the panelists for taking time and sharing their unique perspectives. And before we end, I want to take a moment and thank Atal Innovation Mission at Niti Aayog, who have provided the vision behind this South-South platform. And we are really grateful for their ongoing support. Thank you, and back to you, Rakhi.